Well, I think it's quite, I mean, what an astonishing interview, really. Sort of chest beating, you know, wailing, gnashing of teeth. Oh, I hope I'm wrong. He doesn't hope he's wrong. He hopes he's absolutely right. He's absolutely hoping that President-elect Trump just screws the whole thing up. I mean, it's astonishing. Trump, I was no great fan of Trump. I really wasn't. But you look at, I've spoken to people who do know him. They say he is great at problem solving. He has lots of positive features. They've done psychological assessments on him. He's come out very well. His children seem very well balanced. He was voted for by the people. I think to try and condemn him before he's taken office, to say that he's going to be a disaster, we just need to wait and see. I mean, let's face it, it's not as though the original world order, the current world order, has done such a good job, is it?
Paris, do you think there is this kind of liberal chest beating?
Yeah, I'm not sure I quite agree with your assessment of it. I think a lot of younger people are really actually quite worried and thinking, like, have we been here before? You know, I've been asking a lot of my older friends, you know, like, this stability that we enjoy at the moment, is that just a recent thing? You know, because things have been unstable in the past. And what I'm hearing is that people do feel like it's something really new and that it's not business as usual, it's not politics as usual. And I think there's a lot of fear and a lot of uncertainty. And I think to second guess somebody's motives, I hope that he's wrong.
What stability do we have at the moment? We live in possibly one of the most troubled times that I can ever remember, and you talk about stability and trying to maintain that. We don't have stability.
So what have you
and
your party done to improve stability in this country and around the world?
Well,
give me one concrete example.
Leaving the European Union is one of the main things that we can do to actually try and secure our country, because we are, the European Union is as, I mean, where do we start? We can't rehash the referendum.
I think we should talk about European Union. I just want to carry on.
David Remnick.
Yeah, let's just talk about Trump and Remnick just now.
Yeah, if I could, that he concedes, Trump having been elected, that there are serious groups of unrepresented people with genuine grievances. He spoke of the British North and the American South quite correctly. When did you hear David Remnick or any of the people like him at all concerned about those people before the emergence of Donald Trump for decades?
Well,
this has been waiting to happen, and they paid no attention to it at all. It's reasonable people who raised the question.
Is that a fair point, David? And he says, you know, we're looking for the parachute. We're desperately looking for the parachute. The point was we can revisit the campaign, but we know that Hillary Clinton didn't pay enough attention to the Rust Belt. We know she didn't do all that. It's just come upon them as if they didn't think it was coming.
I think Peter's got a point. I think it's not enough to get that people are suffering, that there are the discontents of globalization. It's about doing something about it. I think we have to remember Hillary lost the election as well as Donald Trump winning the election. And the failure of the consensus politics, and remember the Republican Party as well, in some ways Donald Trump has won the presidency. The Republican Party hasn't won the presidency. They did most of everything they could to try and stop him from winning, but they did win Congress.
When do you think all this started? We're looking at 2008, Obama's elected, we've got a Labour government here, Medvedev is the new president of Russia. When did all this start? When did this development,
I think it was when I was living in the US in the early 1990s. It was already well underway, and one of the major features of it was something which is now mirrored in Europe in a strange way, which is the huge amount of immigration, much of it illegal, coming across the Mexican border, which is something which Trump sort of addressed, though in, it seems to me, a very belated and not very intelligent way. But that changed the United States hugely, and the American Republican movement and conservative journalism particularly were riven during that period over what to do about it. And the Democrats had absolutely nothing to say about it except that it was fine.
But it's got much more to do with jobs going than immigrants coming.
Well, the two things are not entirely unconnected.
Well, I mean, let's go back. It's also to do with NAFTA, apart from anything else. But Paris, just on the question of what the trajectory has been in terms of tolerance, you know, from the 60s onwards, this was always going to be, we had new laws, it's in America, homosexuality wasn't illegal, we had birth control here, we had lots of different things happening here. And there was a tolerance. Do you feel that tolerance, again, has been a kind of blip and we're becoming intolerant towards difference again?
A little bit, 2 points that I'd make. Firstly, I think a lot of this is connected with social media and people just getting their voices heard more. Sometimes that's things that we want to hear and people who didn't have a voice before getting a voice. Sometimes that's people spreading hateful rhetoric. And it really surprised me when I first started seeing comments under YouTube videos and seeing words that I'd not heard in public for years, you know, really racist terms, and thinking, God, this is still out there. And it really annoys me, this characterisation of it as a kind of a response to political correctness gone mad, when actually I think what we're seeing is just traditional sexism, racism and xenophobia just recalibrating itself.
But if you're hearing and seeing that, what is giving it licence?
Well, can I just say, I think it's cynical politicians from your party exploiting people's private prejudices. And I think you raise a really good point about working class people and the left not being interested in them, or the right wasn't interested in them at all. I'm from one of those towns that voted for Brexit, one of those forgotten communities. And I think it's really interesting that nobody's interested in speaking to us when we want to talk about housing or schools or jobs and all the rest of it. But suddenly when people have got racist concerns, everybody wants to listen to them. And it's really important to hear what we want to say.
Let Suzanne come back on that.
This is precisely the problem,
Do you think it's funny with the rise in racism, the rise in hate crimes? Do you think it's risible? You think it's laughable?
Can I speak? This is the problem, that people like you have for years actually said, we don't want to talk about these issues. We don't want to talk about immigration, and you've refused to let people talk about
both
it.
the right, hang on, the right,
good people,
the right and the
left. You know
left.
nothing about me. Excuse me. I presented a documentary for Radio 1 2 years ago in which we explored people's prejudices, and I went to meet a woman who wore a hijab because that was one of my prejudices, something that I felt personally in my head. We all have stupid private prejudices in our heads. Imagine how unbearable it would be if everybody was encouraged to express them and celebrate them.
If I could just make this simple point. For a very, very long time, people who held perfectly reasonable views about all kinds of subjects, from marriage to immigration, were actually characterised as having something wrong with them.
On both the right and the left.
Phobia. It was a particularly left-wing tactic. If you held a legitimate view about, for instance, that I mentioned because it's simplest, the level of immigration into this country, there were people who felt absolutely no compunction in smearing you as racist. And this happened all the time, and there was a complete unwillingness to debate rationally. It was, you can't say that, and there's something wrong with you to say it. And this is recompense for that.
I think this is a classic example of the reasons we don't talk about the problems of globalisation, because we've instantly got onto social culture war issues. We were talking a moment ago about the towns in the north of England, the Rust Belt, their economic decline, the flight of jobs, and now we're talking about social issues. This is the right and the left failing to talk about exactly those issues.
You link those things.
Well, do you know what I think is really
you link them
interesting
instantly, without question. You don't talk about anything else. Let's talk about the economics of it. Let's talk about the Rust Belt. Mexican immigrants haven't caused the destruction of Detroit.
So you either take presumably you either take a position for looking ahead to 2017 that this year has been a disaster and there needs to be a fight back, or this has actually been a great year and how do we consolidate it? Let's go with the former, that it's been a disaster and there should be a fight back, which may be your position, but what do you think will happen? What has to happen next year for you to feel better?
I think in 2016, we look at this year as a year when lots of forces were unleashed. Irrespective of what you think about Brexit or Trump, a lot of expectations, positive and negative, have been raised. Forces, the furies have been unleashed. I don't know if Donald Trump has a plan for what happens when people discover he can't do all the things he said on the campaign trail. I don't know what the plan is for when we don't perhaps get the deal that we confidently said that we couldn't. We're already dealing with a disappointment that there suddenly isn't £350 million for the NHS.
I agree completely with that. The expectations have been raised by largely irresponsible and marginal people who came to prominence because proper, responsible politicians refused to deal with the problem.
Would this be UKIP was marginal as far as you're concerned?
I've always regarded UKIP as a dad's army marginal party, and I don't think that it ever had any serious possibility of reaching power, and that made it subject to Kissinger's law. You know, the struggles are always most vicious where the stakes are so small, and that's where it finds itself.
Suzanne,
but the Conservative Party was the thing which needed to be got rid of.
Suzanne, if you think it's been a great year, then how does it consolidate if what David is saying is right? There's so many people who will be disappointed with the nature of actually how Brexit will play out and the nature of how Donald Trump will be in the White House.
Well, I think, again, you're jumping to huge conclusions here, that we're not going going to get a good deal. And I absolutely see that we hold all the cards in this country. We have the biggest trade deficit with the European Union. They need us far more than we need them. There is every opportunity to get a good deal out there. And
this will be the first time in history.
to go back to my picture right at the beginning, just if we can reinvigorate our fishing industry by getting control of our fishing waters back, that will be a wonderful
one of the reasons that the fishing industry is declining because of the fishing stock. It's not just about
we can talk about it in relation to your photograph as well, and how the EU is buying up fishing rights in third world countries.
Paris, if you don't think it was a great year this year, how will it get better? What needs to happen for next year?
How will it get better? I'm pretty pessimistic at the moment, to be honest, and I think that there's a lot of provocation going on, and it's very interesting how this, can we just have a debate about immigration turns into Polish centres being vandalised, rise in hate crimes, and I think that a lot of people from marginalised backgrounds are really worried about this, and it's not going to affect you. It's not going to affect you. Nobody's going to come up to you in the street, and nobody's going to come up to you in the street and abuse you because of the colour of your skin.
People abuse me because I'm UKIP all the time, and you've been doing it on this programme, Paris.
That's a political persuasion. The point is nobody's going to attack you based on the colour of your skin or who you are. So this is all just an academic debate for you, but I think a lot of people are very worried, and I think that people will be organising, and I think that we'll see some really interesting activism
to next year. Okay, very quickly, one good thing about 2016 for me, it was Andy Murray being declared #1 in the world in tennis. One good thing for 2016?
Actually, I really loved that moment too. It was
great.
Fantastic.
For you, Peter, something brilliant this year?
I can't think of any good things about 2016 apart from the opportunity to gloat at the discomfiture of my foes. Apart from that, no.
Anything good, Paris?
Madonna as a clown. I mean, what is going on?
David?
The Olympics.
The Olympics.